Salute, 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 salute anybody who's out there, man. You got Bruce Goes over here. Of all nights on a Friday evening here, man. And I got a special guest who I just met a little while ago, man. And I'm sure you know who he is if you're here, but let me shout out Mr. Pad stopped in. He's gonna come in later. I got my brother the healer, Focus Ball in here, man. Salute to you, my brother. Doing a couple of getting right over here, man. And anybody that I'm doing nothing illegal. I'm a medical marijuana patient for the state of Rhode Island. I'm just loosening up my arthritis here, so I'm getting ready to talk to a superstar. So bear with me 1 second. I mean, everybody who's alive has heard of this man's brother. You know, if you haven't, then you're not a fan of the sport that we love. But I'm fortunate enough to have Demetrius Bright. Salute to you, man. Thank you for coming in, man. I know this is kind of a prompt little live that we put together here, man, and I appreciate anybody who's coming in. But we got a legend in here, man. We got somebody we're going to talk to, the brother of Big George Foreman, man. It's a gentleman I just met. Let's bring out here, man. I hope he's my friend, man, because I wouldn't want to get on the bad side of anybody in this family, man. Here's my brother Roy Foreman. Roy, shout out and thank you for coming in. Remy, salute to you.
The pleasure is mine. There's no bad side to us, so you can't get on the bad side. It's always a good side. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Man, you sound just like Big George, because we've all heard Big George a million times. We've heard him selling that Foreman grill, which I purchased 5 of in my career.
I bought a few myself for gifts and things like that, so they work. That's one thing about it.
Oh yeah, they do.
Yes, they work.
I bought 5 of them only because I used it so much. I had one I just had for fish.
Yeah.
And then when they came around with the removable burners, I could take it off and wash it really well.
Oh yeah, that really made it well then for people. Yeah,
it did, man. Oscar Prince, thanks for coming in, man. Thank you for coming in, man. We're talking to Roy Foreman here, the brother of Big George Foreman. And Roy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We're going to talk about George later, but tell people where you're at, what you're doing in the sport of boxing. I mean, you've been involved
Oh yeah. Well, I've been in boxing about 40 years now, right? Since I was a kid. I started around about 24 after I left from working with ABC. And that's kind of how I started, of course. And then I went into just doing promotions on my own in the late 70s, early 80s. And I formed a company called Roy Foreman Productions. And I did quite a few shows around in the Houston area, all over the country, really. Houston, Denver, Cancun, Acapulco, Cozumel, London, Canada. I mean, of course, Atlantic City, all over. I've been promoting for 40 years, and around about 1990, George came back. That was one reason. Let me add that part. So when George came back, that gave me a whole different, aspect on what I was able to do in the sport. And of course, the bigger the name in boxing, the easier doors open for you. So quite naturally, by having him, it made it easier for me to do more things. I shouldn't say, well, easier to do. Not easy, easier to do. So I continued promoting. In between that, I worked with the United States Olympic team. I was one of the team managers for about 2 years with them, the 88, 86, 88, and 94, and for Los Angeles. And I actually was supposed to have been working the show in 94, but George came back it was 92, I'm sorry. And George came back to boxing. By that time, I was managing his business. So I wasn't able to fulfill the whole part of actually coaching in a World Olympic. I got a chance to work the United States Olympics team. We had a thing called the United States Olympic Fest, and those ran for about 3 to 4 years. But my dream was to be able to coach in the Olympic Games. But by that time, Georgia started boxing, and I was very busy, and I just couldn't put in the time that it took, to be a part of that. But in between all of that time, we had started the George Foreman Youth and Community Center in Houston, Texas, there around 1985, 86. With all this going on, we were opening and developing George Foreman Youth and Community Center, and I was president of that place. So that took a lot of my time. And then in between that time, I was asked by the United States government to serve as an ambassador to some of the foreign countries in the Caribbean, Jamaica being one, to China. Well, the Caribbean was first. That was first, in between that time. So I spent a lot of time in the Caribbean, and then I came back. George's career got hot, and then from that point on, it was just all promoting pretty much. And I worked as an international broadcaster for HBO Sports. George did the domestic, so most people seen him in the United States, but I was actually seen around the world. So you may find me in China or Africa, someplace like that. And sometimes it was dubbed, and sometimes it wasn't. But so I really had a bigger audience than he did. But of course, in the United States, you got to be seen here in order to be big. So we kind of had the broadcasting thing kind of locked down for a while in sports and boxing. But it was all a great life. You know what I mean, Bruce? And I wouldn't change anything for it. We pretty much came from a very, very, very humble beginning in this country. And I tell people all the time that, we were a product of a compassionate society, things that were available that George was able to do to make our life better, going to the Job Corps, just to straighten his life off, becoming a boxer, winning an Olympic gold medal, becoming heavyweight champion of the world. And it changed my whole family's life, to be honest with you. Everybody, I was able to get educated, go to college that he was able to pay for. And, my mom's new homes. We tried to stay the same type people that we were from coming up in Fifth Ward, because life in Fifth Ward was not easy growing up. And we were fortunate enough to become one of those stories that we were able to just more say, move up, not be better than people, but get a better life. And to this point, God's been good to us, and it's still, up until this point. So the last 50 years has been pretty good to us.
Man, I'll tell you, I'll never forget the story I heard from George once. Your mom brought home a hamburger after work and had to cut it up into how many pieces?
It was 4 of us there plus her, so it was 5 people. But you got to remember that time it wasn't a McDonald's hamburger. That's what I tell people. This was a real hamburger back then. So you got a good bite and a couple of French fries, and you had to be satisfied with it, so it didn't matter. It wasn't like you could go and get more. The problem was sometimes George ate my piece too. So, like I say, those are the stories that our children. It's funny, Bruce, but our children do not believe some of the stories we tell them. That's like made up to them, because they never lived anywhere close to that type of life, and they think these are fairy tales. But that's why we keep pushing rather the American dream. That it's possible. Everything. We're not a perfect country. No part of this world is. But you know what? You're only going to get what you work for, and that's what you have to do. You can't be. Nobody's going to give you anything really. They're not. It may seem like it, but the only reason they're going to give it to you, you have to show that you're working for it. And that's what I think that we try to push on to all of the kids in our family and everybody everywhere else to, be willing to put your hard work into it, and it'll pay off. But if it doesn't, sometimes, hey, that's just the way it was supposed to be. But most of the time, it does.
Yeah, I see that. And when George came back now for his second career, wasn't that because you needed a roof for that youth center?
Well, we did need a roof because the roof was leaking. But we needed to do more than that. The things that we wanted to do, he had money, but he didn't have enough money to provide for the youth center and his life and his wife and his church. So, we went out and did a couple of speaking engagements to some places. And he went to this church, and I think it's in the book though, but he went to this church down in Georgia, a place called Franklin, Georgia, I think it was. And they asked George to come in and speak, and he went in and told his story. And, like some of the churches do, they took up an offering, right? Love offering or something they called it. And at the end, the guy comes up with this big basket full of money, and the preacher says, is this all we're going to do? We got to do better than this. We can show George Foreman, blah, blah, the same story. You can do better than this. And they passed the bucket back out again. Well, George really was embarrassed by that. And so after that, he says, I know how I can make some money. I can go back to boxing. He was only 36 years old and when he decided that. Really 35 actually when he decided. But he was 37 when he got his first fight. And people just thought that was the biggest joke in the world. But he was serious. He said, I go back, I can fight, I can make some money. And that's what I'll do. And that's what he did.
Now that was just truly an amazing story. Hey, my brother Anthony Carter, Trick Nolte just pulled up in the building, bro.
Okay. Hey, Anthony.
How you doing? How
Can
you
you
doing?
hear
That was
me?
me hit you up earlier,
I'm doing
man.
good.
One
Okay.
from
All right.
Pasadena.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was me. How you doing?
I'm doing
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Just got in.
Trick,
Just got in here.
Trick,
Okay,
good to
okay.
see you, man. Thank you for introducing me to Roy, man. We've been talking for the last few minutes, man. What a great guy, man. What a great guy. And you know what I wanted to ask him? I wanted to ask you, Roy. Do you know George Jakovic? Because Trick introduced me to him, and I speak with George all the time now. He's a former
Jack.
HBO exec.
Oh, it was so many of those guys. We dealt mostly. If he was, it depends on what division he was in. We worked mostly in the sports with Ross Greenberg, uh, Gary Payton, uh, Eric Payton rather, and I think Botcher, Lou DiBella, the Lloyd Kerry Davis. Guys like that. So we didn't go. We didn't do a lot of. We didn't come to New York in the offices a whole lot. We mostly seen them on the road.
I got you. I got you.
Hmm
Now,
So a
now
lot of
tell,
guys
tell,
I
tell
knew,
me
but wouldn't see them.
tell me about a lot of the fighters that you've worked with, because you said you promoted over 200 fights. What are
Oh
some of the
God.
big names you work with and the memorial fights you promoted?
Well, I've done quite a few shows. I worked with Michael Nunn, of course, and I guess guys, people, if you follow boxing, you know Michael Nunn. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
that's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
second to
Yeah,
none.
yeah, second to none. I just spoke with him the other day, as a matter of fact, with Reggie Johnson, Thomas Tate, Warren Williams, who was a kid from Houston at the NABF. He had the NABF title. He came close to fighting for the world title, but he lost one fight in between. I've worked with Tim Witherspoon. I've worked with oh gosh, Larry Holmes. Even early on in Larry Holmes' early first career, I did things with him. Maybe Marie Mercer. Mm.
Mm.
It's just it's a
All
lot.
stars.
Oh,
Yeah, pretty much. But and a lot of kids that were up and coming, that I got a chance to work with. And to be honest with you, those guys are really more fun when they're coming up. I mean, if that makes sense, because when they
mm,
get to a certain status,
Mm.
they're like everybody else. They have to have this and they have to have that. But when they're just coming up, there's nothing like working with those guys sitting when they're pure and green, and they're still calling everybody yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, or no, sir. You know what I mean?
mm,
And then all of a sudden, when they grow up into that thing of, oh, now I'm the no, sir, and that's what kind of changes a little bit. But other than that, that was the fun
mm.
part about being able to see them come up and then go to that level. Pernell Whitaker, I'm trying to think of guys as I talk about this, but I mean that's that was the fun part about the sport, and that still is the fun part about the sport. Don't get me wrong, working with the bigger name guys, but some of these guys kind of get the big heads when they get to a point, and it's just not the same anymore.
Mm.
Mhm. Let me shout out Remy that's in here. I don't know if I already shot. The Nordic Warrior stopped in, man. Punch Smollett's in here. I got Demetrius Bright, Mr. Mechanical stopped in, man. We got some good people coming in here. My brother Opulent LD, man. Salute to you. My brother A Rod El Chino Boxing, man. Salute to you, brother. Salute to you, man. Thank you for coming in. We got the legendary Roy Foreman in here, brother of Big George Foreman. And let me ask you more about George, man. You're such a nice guy, Roy. And man, you've got a plethora of your own knowledge to share. But I'm like a fanboy over here. I want to ask you a couple of questions about your
Go
brother.
ahead, knock yourself out, enjoy it.
All
Hey,
right, man. But now, when you went to Jamaica to fight Joe Frazier,
yeah.
George said his knees were knocking. Did you have the confidence in George, or were your knees knocking too, my brother?
Well, I was only like 16 years old, so you don't, you're not even thinking about fear. I never thought about Joe Frazier really until when I say thought about when Ali and Frazier fought, right? Let me back it up just a little bit on that. And I think I may have, of course, Ali was the fear, being one of the greatest boxers ever. But when Joe Frazier beat him, Joe Frazier to me became the scariest man on the planet. Okay. And
Mm.
I'm thinking, George, after a couple of years later, like, why do you have to fight this guy right now? Can you fight somebody else? He said, well, I done beat everybody else. I'm the number one contender. If I pass up this opportunity, I may not get it again. And so when I was still in high school, and my high school principal, who a lot of people didn't know, I went to school called MB Smiley High. I don't think they changed the name of it now. It's just
No,
it's North
I know what
North
it's at.
Forest
In the
Independence.
Fifth Ward.
Well, this was actually in Scenic Woods then. We had moved out. By the time George
Mm-hmm.
fought for the title, we had moved out a little bit into the suburbs in an area called Scenic Woods.
Okay.
And I went to E.O.
I
Smith.
know this.
Now, when I left E.O. Smith, which was the center of the Fifth Ward, I graduated from E.O.
Mm-hmm.
Smith in the ninth grade, and I went over I went to Jefferson Davis for a minute, and which was in Fifth Ward. Then I left Jeff Davis, and we moved out to Smiley. And my George bought my mom her first home out in that was off of Little York Road, as a matter of fact, which seems so far away back then when you thought about it. And it was for
Yeah.
us. It was a world apart. To be honest with you, it was a world apart. But so my principal let me go to Jamaica. When he found out George was my brother, he said, "Listen, I'm going to suspend you from school for 5 days." Right? I didn't know what he was. I'm like, "For what?" I didn't do anything because I was playing, sports. I wanted to go to school and play sports and every day. He says, so he calls my mother up, right? And he says, and my mother said, "Well, why you suspended him from school?" He said, "Well, we just found out that George is his brother. And his brother's fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world." And my mother said, "So school is more important, to her than that." We said, "No, but we know that he wants to go, and you're not going because my mother never seen George fight, so she was not going." And she says, "Okay," and they let me out. And the story, I'm flying to Jamaica. Back then, it took a little longer than it did today because you had to stop in this place, then go to another place. And now they got non-stops. But back then, I think I flew to Florida, and I went to somewhere else, and then I finally flew to Kingston. And I'm a young kid. I'd never flown out of the country before by myself. But when I get there, I land in Jamaica. And as you go across when you go to the other countries, you have to have uh, a
Passport.
passport. So I get off, and there's this fence that they keep people blocked off. You can't just walk out there because you have to go through customs. And so when I get off, Joe Frazier was there actually picking up some of his family members, right? And I see this guy, man, who looks like a boulder. I'm talking about he was like rock solid. Had his neck looked like, oh God, I'd never seen an athlete that looked like that. I mean, he really was. He had a turtleneck on too. It's Jamaica, 80 degrees, but I guess he wanted to keep his body. But this guy looked like a boulder when I tell you that. So I see this guy, and I said to myself, George, I think was 36-0 or 37-0. And I said, well, 37-1 won't be so bad, That's really what I thought.
Ooh.
I'm like, that still won't be bad, So I see this guy, but the thing about it, I'm in the airport, and because Joe was picking up some of his people, they thought I actually was with Joe Frazier. George didn't know I was coming. Nobody knew I was coming. It was a complete surprise. And so Joe Frazier, see the guy, he said, "Who you with, man?" I says, "Roy Foreman, looking for George Foreman." He said, "George?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's my brother." He said, "What?" So he said, "Get in the van with me." I said, "Oh Lord, I done jumped in the van with Joe Frazier and his people." I did not realize they were staying right next door to the same hotel. So he takes me, drops me off at the hotel, made sure I was checked in and everything. I mean, and our friendship started then. So I go inside, and that George, he was going ready to go to training. He's like, "Man, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I caught a fight." He said, "How'd you get it? How'd you get it?" I said, "Well, on the plane." He said, "How'd you get to the hotel?" I said, "Joe Frazier dropped me off." He said, "Joe Frazier?" He says,
Mm.
he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, Joe Frazier." So I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe Joe will take it easy on him now since he done made his little brother, Joe. But over the next couple of days, I kind of saw a confidence that came up in George, and I knew then he was not going to let his little brother get him get beat. And I became confident more every day. George, he was nervous. I know that the day of the fight, the day before the fight, the day of the fight, he was definitely nervous. But I think by that time, I had overcome the fear of him getting beat. I just knew that he was going to put up his best and it was going to be a good fight. Uh, I said, Joe, this is not Joe Frazier won't be a walkover, but George won't either. But never did I think it would come out like it did that night. I can't even fathom. I can't even tell that lie to think it would be that way.
Damn. Now after that, it was it was that I don't want to say cakewalk, but it looked like an extermination over Kenny Norton
Yeah.
in Venezuela.
Oh yeah. It was Norton. Now I tell people, you ever talk about a fighter that I know was particularly scared of a guy? He was afraid of George. I mean, he was just afraid. George had kind of got his nerves early on when they first signed the fight. He said something to him. I can't remember what he said, but I do know that Norton was just afraid of George from the beginning. Yeah, as a matter of fact, he went to a hypnotist. If you see the stories, he took on a hypnotist. And he had fought Ali, I think, twice, if I can remember that correctly.
Oh, yeah. Life and death.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that some guys, man, you saw how he beat Joe Frazier, and you see how he beat the guy Joe Roman over in Japan, and the kind of guy George was. It was a fight to George. The only fight, and George tells us to this day, and I know this as a fact, the only fight George never went in that he had any fear of is when he fought Ali. He had no fear. He just thought this was going to be a cakewalk. I'm going to walk this old man down. I'm going to beat him like crazy.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going to get on that one. Let me shout out a couple of people that came in here in the meantime, bro. Opion LD stopped in, man. My brother Electro Jed stopped in, man. J Blues Radio, man. Thank you for stopping in. Almond Brown. We're talking to Roy Foreman over here, the brother of the great George Foreman, and a great man himself. Mr. Mechanical, thank you for coming in. Unscripted Virtuoso, salute my brother. Scrapbook Boxing, my man. Scrapbook Boxing. You know something, Roy? I bet Scrapbook Boxing knows as much about George as you do.
Probably does.
I'm going to bite my tongue there, but, man, Scrapbook Boxing is a pleasure to see him in here, man. Thank you so much for coming in. Peace to you. Did I miss anybody out there, man? Demetrius Bright, man. Thank you for coming in, man. All right, now, like George said, he thought he was going to cakewalk over Muhammad Ali. Why don't you take us through that scenario, my brother Roy?
Well, that was just when you look at George always trained hard, so that wasn't it. But he trained probably extra hard for this fight than he did others. But if you followed the sport, you've seen yourself like he had destroyed Norton. He destroyed Joe Frazier, and all these guys had defeated Ali. So, and George was only, I think, 24 at the time, 25. So you just felt that, it was no fear, nobody. It was just a thing where people just figured, man, don't kill the guy. He's been a hero to most of us in the African American, in the Black community, in the African American community. So you hoped that, you just didn't just kill him and just hurt him. So I think a lot of that George believed himself. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to hit this guy with the same shot that I hit Frazier, Norton, and all those other guys with, and he's just going to crumble. But the idea that Ali is one of those guys you have to take his heart into mind when you're fighting him. You have to take his heart. Because even with the Frazier fight, when Frazier hit him with that left hook and dropped him, man, I thought everybody thought it was over. But that guy got it right up. Then you knew that there was a lion inside that guy that said, no, I'm not going out this easy. And that's exactly what happened. And that's the only time I ever seen George not have any fear at all. None. And it's hard when he fought Ali.
I feared for Ali in that fight.
Yes.
In fact, I bet against Ali, and I was an Ali fan, but I just did not. I didn't think he had a chance against George. George was invincible, like you said. He went through everybody. Jose King, Roman. Oh man, Joe Frazier like nothing.
Yeah, he just beat all the guys before this. Guys like Wepner, Peralta, guys that just giving Ali and the other guys fit, and George just walked straight through them. It just seemed like it was a no-brainer. I know some guys. I know some friends of mine's dads who they literally bet their cars and things. Man, they were so sure.
I really feared for him, and somebody wanted to bet against me. I don't know why I bet against Ali. I never made that mistake again. But
if you're a smart man, it just seems like that was the bet to take.
It really was.
I think the odds was like 8-1. Something like that, 7-1 in George's favor. Just wasn't supposed to be a cakewalk. And Ali, to be honest with you, had that fight taken place before George got cut, then you get the fight that everybody thought was going to happen. because Ali was in terrible shape. I think Ali had given up his at that point. It was he had reached the thing that, you know what, if I lose, I just lose. Because he was in terrible shape. He was nowhere near. He was having marital problems at the same time. So I just think that he had made up. But after that cut came through, something in him said, "No, man, this is your chance. You got another chance." And he just got himself together, and he became the Ali of what people had seen prior to the '60s. You know, in the '60s and stuff like that. He got himself together. So and but that's what history is made of. You know, going against the odds, and that's what makes history. You know, you go back to 1776. This country made history by becoming an independent, leaving Great Britain, and becoming an independent country like we did. We weren't supposed to. That wasn't supposed to happen. We weren't supposed to succeed. And all throughout life, when you look at the problems that this country faced, everybody, every nationality and whatever came up against some mighty big odds. Guess what? We overcame them and made this into one of the greatest countries you could ever see. I don't care. Problems, sure. It's like a family and a wife, and a husband and a wife and children. We have problems, but the ones who stick it out and overcome it are the ones who are going to be successful. So that's what you have to do. But Ali was made. That's the kind of person he was, and we got all of us after that. Him, Joe Frazier, we all became great friends through all. Like I said, I was a kid. I'm much younger than they were, but I got to know all of them as I started working with George and being around them, and they became like brothers. Larry Holmes, the whole group of us, man. We all spend time together as much as we could.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Let me shout out Andre that stopped in here. Andre Rodriguez, man. Thanks for coming in. That's me, man. Thank you, brother. Marion G. Glad you're in here, man. You know who we're talking to when we're talking to Roy Foreman over here, man. Roy, are you George's? You're George's little brother, obviously.
Yes,
Now you told
yes.
you told us how old you were. You're probably about my age. What year were you born, Roy?
I was born in 1966.
Uh,
But no, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. 56.
56. I'm 54.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Okay.
man, I was gonna tell him I was 64 too if you said 66. But Dr. Paul, man. Dr.
Yeah.
Paul, thanks for coming in, and Thomas Jones.
I'm
Now,
glad to be here.
I just want to shout the brothers as they come in here, man, because it's a man. If I was just talking to you and Trick on the phone in a three-way call, it would be great. But man, having you on the show here and having people come in and listen to this, man, this is beautiful for me, man. This is great, Roy and Trick, man. Thank you so much for setting this up, man. Let me tell you a little quick thing about Trick. Trick got me on a call today, and I was talking to Marlon Starling, bro. I mean,
Oh
damn.
man, yes. I forgot to mention Marlon. I even did a show with him up in Atlantic City once, and with Marlon over at the Tropicana with Don Elbaum.
Oh yeah, man,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
stuff. And you know, I was dropping names to Marlon, and I saw him fight before at the Providence Civic Center, and he was smiling. He was, man, we were like a couple of kids going back and forth, but he said he's gonna come on the show. We're gonna do a little show with Marlon. So man, you know, Trick Nolte, Trick, you set it all up, my brother. Man, I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart. And another question I want to ask you. Well, you know, we're going on with George's career. How about that roadblock there with Jimmy Young, the end of career number one? But
Another fighter that George underestimated. Thought he'd walk straight through him. Remember, we at the time George was supposed to be given a rematch with Ali, and the WBC had pretty much ordered and mandated that if Ali didn't give George a rematch, that they were going to strip Ali of the title and let George and maybe Norton fight for it again, right? So we had signed a contract with ABC Television, and they said, okay, we'll give you a 3-fight deal, you know, to stay busy, just to stay busy. So we signed a contract with them, and I think the first two guys George knocked, I forget who they were, Dino Dennis maybe, and Jose, the guy from Minnesota. What's his name?
Ledoux?
Scott Ledoux. Tough
Yeah.
kid, tough guy. Scott Ledoux. So
Out of
George,
Canada.
so was he out of Canada? Okay, I knew.
No, he was Minnesota.
I knew. That's cold.
Minneapolis.
It was wherever
Scott
he was from.
Ledoux?
It was very
Canadian.
No. Scott
Go
Ledoux.
ahead.
Yeah, he fought out of Minnesota, but I know
Yeah.
wherever it was cold because
Okay.
we went up there for a press
Oh, he was
conference.
he was a hockey player trick like you. I bet you and him would go. You and him on that ice would be something, man.
It was cold. That's all I can tell you. We went up there for a press conference, man. It was cold up there. So the third fight was they said, okay, we got to put George in there. We want George to fight somebody. He's knocking all these guys out in the first round, and we need George to go, put some rounds because the sponsors were like, man, we can't get our commercials in. George is knocking guys out too quick, which we always thought was a good thing. And so Dunn came up with this kid named Jimmy Young, and I mean, Young was as styles go, he probably had the worst style out of anybody in boxing to
Mm,
box, right?
mm.
And
Nobody looked good with Jimmy Young.
nobody looked good against Jimmy Young. Nobody. But there's another time George just figured I'd go out and knock this guy out. Like George said before, he said, I got more knockouts than this guy has fights, period. So it's one of those things again that you think you're gonna go out and blow this guy out. But Jimmy was a very crafty guy. I've looked at that fight a couple of times, and I honestly thought, yeah, that George actually deserved the decision on that fight. Because the first 7 rounds, George carried the fight. Basically, he carried. It was when Young was running and ducking and dodging. I think it was a split decision. I can't remember exactly, but I thought he deserved the victory, and I just still thought we would get it. But as I'm able to sit here right now today, I can say God had other things in plan, right? Because in losing that, George found something, and what he found was that he needed to change his life better than what it was, become a better person than what you are now. And you've taken God for granted all this point. And so that night, after losing the decision to Jimmy Young in his dressing room, he had this vision of what do they call it? It's not called vision; it's another word for it. But anyway, he had this whole eclectic, thing where he seen God. And a lot of people, and me included, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of us thought maybe he was just, man, you lost a boxing match and it's another excuse, or whatever it is. It's just an excuse. But in the dressing room that night, man, I seen a whole paranormal, uh, that vision that I couldn't even give you the scene because it probably only lasted 4 to 5 minutes, guys. But it seemed like eternity in that dressing room that night, where he started saying, "Hey, I can see Jesus on the cross. Hallelujah! I'm born again. Uh, Jesus Christ is alive in me, and I'm bleeding where his thorns were. His hands and the places on his feet. He was kept saying this." And in a doctor that we had, Dr. West, and our masseuse and the security guards we had, everybody was trying to hold him down. And when I tell you 7 big men could not hold him down off this table, it was the craziest thing I ever seen in my. It was just crazy. And in the back, right where we were standing, we had back then they had a record player. Now Anthony may not know what a record player is, but there was a record player we had that set
I
that we
do.
used to play. We used to play our music on right before George go in the ring. He always said listen to music, and the song that was playing was by Sam Cooke. It was called "A Change Is Gonna Come."
Oh, oh,
That
oh.
song, but through all this rambunctiousness that's going on in this dressing room, it never stopped. It kept playing. Nobody knocked it over. It was, as I said, that night I thought nothing of it. But as it started coming more and more, I realized I said, and that's exactly what it was. A change was going to come, and
Wow.
through all that, George, like I said, the rest became history. He became, he stopped boxing, and they offered him tons of money to come back to box. I mean, he already had a contract with ABC. He was making more money than anybody as it was in boxing. He was the Mike Tyson of his era in between that time when it came to fighting, and probably a better version of Mike Tyson, really. But he was a little more polished than Mike. Well, let's say it like that. But George, because George didn't get in trouble in the streets and things, he was more himself. But started preaching, and he had no embarrassment about what he was doing. He would go on the street. He was a street preacher. He preached in the church too, but he was a street preacher. And he'd go and set up a place at night. And he went to jail a couple of times because people really got offended with him. Some places he would go and they'd say, "Get him off the corner. He hurt my business." And George would just keep preaching and preaching. And so, of course, they called the police, and a couple of places arrested him.
Did they know? Did they know who he was?
Yeah, well, a lot of people, almost didn't believe it was George because by this time he had shaved his, cut his hair off his head and stuff. So a lot of people, when they hadn't, if you hadn't seen him, maybe just didn't know it was him. And once the police got there, the rule violation pretty much was assembling without a permit. You couldn't just sit up on the corner. You had to have a permit. That's what the basic law was. So he was arrested about 2 or 3 times, but he never stopped. He didn't care. That was his word, was to preach the gospel. And so along the way, he got better. He built his own church, and right now it's been 77. He started preaching about 78. It's been about 42, 43 years now. And hey, that's the story. And God, and he was right. A change came, made him a better person, but his life became even better. I used to say, man, you're like a modern day Job to a point,
Wow, yeah.
I seen his life. It was, I look at the Bible, I go like, you were all of them at one time. Samson, you were David, you were Samson, you were Job. You made all these life and changes that your metamorphosis was that's what it was, from here to here to here to here. And finally God put you in a spot that he wanted you to put you in, and that was the preacher's word. And even through all this, the years that of coming back into boxing or with the youth center, the one thing he always did, no matter where we were, he had a fight. He always made it back in time for Sunday to be at church services on Sunday. He won the heavyweight championship of the world in Las Vegas that night. He did not go to parties. Even when we fought Evander Holyfield for the title, there was no parties. We went to the parties. I was holding most of them, but we went to the parties. But he had always had me have him a flight to get out of here at midnight where he could get back to church and be at church that next morning. He won the heavyweight championship of the world. That next morning, he was in church at 9 o'clock. He caught that 12:45 red eye out of Vegas, and 6:30 landed in Houston. 9 o'clock, he was at the church.
Wow. Let me shout out a couple more people that came in while we were talking, man. Great stuff. Tony Boswell, bro. Thank you for coming in, man. Thank you for coming in. My brother, boxing conversation with Reggie Owens, man. Great to see you in here, man. The man I listen to every morning, the Gold Professor, man. Thank you for coming in. And Andre Rodriguez, Kenneth Johnson, brother. Salute to you, man. Salute to you. Thank you. Kui always brings up the real estate value in the joint, man. Thank you for coming in. Thank you.
That's good.
Who else we got in here, man? Let me see if anybody. Picasso, my brother, the road warrior himself. Picasso came in here, man. Harvey, man. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you. And while we were talking, I had another one of my brothers who I invited on here, man. My brother G5, he snuck in the back door. And then let me say one thing before I go back on. Somebody asked me to take the picture down so they can see you, Roy. We don't have a picture of Roy.
We don't have the camera. I tell them next time what I'll do when we do this again, I'll make sure I get you a picture in advance and put up something, because I don't know why it's not. Normally it is. I don't know why it's not there.
Well, that's okay, bro, because we can hear it in your heart. You're talking, and we see a picture of you up there with your brother, the young George Foreman. Now we just talked about career number one. Now that was when George was like this. Now what was the difference when 10 years later when George came back like this, man? G5, before we start, why don't you tell everybody where you're at, bro? Good to have you in here, man. If you got any questions for my brother Roy, bro, we got.
Oh man, salute to you, Bruce, my brother. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, you're getting a little bit of feedback, but
I can hear you fine.
Okay, now I hear you fine right now, my brother. Fine right now. We're talking to Roy Foreman up here, man, the brother of Big George, and G5's a Texas brother, Roy. So he grew up in your neck of the woods.
Okay.
Good man here. All right, so
Oh,
so
yeah.
now
Can y'all
George
hear
is
me?
starting his George is starting his second career. I saw that first fight. I think was it Steve Zowski? Is that the guy that he fought?
Steve Zowski. That was the guy he fought
Steve,
in
and I'm
Sacramento,
telling people,
California.
this is George Foreman, and they say, no, this is an old George Foreman fight. I'm saying, no, he's coming back. I think that was what in 1989, I believe.
87, actually 87.
87. Okay,
Hmm.
and man, who comes out there? But this I don't want to say this funny looking bald headed guy who looked like he didn't belong in a boxing ring. But that's what we saw. That's who came in the ring.
Well, that's what it was. I mean, it was this funny looking guy that you saw in the boxing ring, bald head guy. And that was the difference, because you weren't trying to be George Foreman in 1973 from 1968 to 1977. You had to redefine yourself. You asked me, what's the difference in that fight? The difference was discipline. There was a lot of discipline that took place in between those 10 years. You realize first that I can't go back to being, I'm not going to be 27 again, 26. I'm going to be 36. I'm 37. So you have to change your life just like everything else, everything that you do. And the George we seen that night, he was 267 pounds, right? But what people don't know is that probably about 6 to 8 months before that, he was 315 pounds, because that's as high. Well, that's as far as the scale went. We don't know. It might have been more than that, but that was as far as the scale would go. But he was 315 pounds, and he became dedicated, man, more than anything else. He walked it off, he ran it off, but he did more walking than he did anything else, because when you get to be a certain age, you got to be careful with ankles, shin splints, and ankles, and all that kind of stuff. So he was careful, but he got to the point he'd walk about 10 miles a day in one direction, and we go pick him up and take him, meet him and take him back home, and he did this every day for 6 straight months. And then he started coming to the gym. And by the time he got to the gym, it didn't take him. He didn't have to learn how to box all over again. He just had to learn how to be smarter in the ring when you got in there. So it was and then you realize that conditioning. And the George you see in that picture right there, that was a conditioned George Foreman that you're looking at right there on that picture. I don't know who all can see it, but that was taken in Canada in let's see, we fought Ken LaCousta, a guy over in Canada, in his hometown, as a matter of fact. Yep. And we fought him. I think that was one of either 89 or 90 that we took that he took that picture. And believe it or not, in public, other than being in the ring, that was the first pictures that my friend Mark Morrison, who was a photographer with Ring Magazine, he had traveled with us throughout the whole journey. And that's why I wanted him to have the cover for that book, because he had been with us the whole 5 years they took us to get to the title, and never charged us a dime, and out for the pictures and stuff to be with us. He was part of that whole journey, and he had that on his in his life. And he's become a pretty big photojournalist himself now. Worked for Willie Nelson, Travis Tritt, all the big country guys down there in Texas. Man, he shot him out, George Strait. So and shout out to Mark Morrison, because he did a fantastic job.
Facts, bro. I got right there, man.
Yeah, that's it. I hate I got a lot of things I could show you, but I wish I had to, but my camera's not working. I don't know what to do.
I hear you, my brother. I hear you, and I'm gonna take my face off here and get us set up here. But I did. Oh, here look at Trick over here, man. Trick.
Oh yeah, he told me he had that picture. He said he had a picture of him and George and his dad in Cleveland too. That's in the hitting the punching bag. That's the speed bag, right, Anthony?
Yeah, this is book I got. I'm going through the pictures with George in there.
I think that's him working the speed bag. If I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the same book. Trick sent it to me. It was one of the greatest gifts I think I've received in my life over here, man. It's called Knockout, the Art of Boxing by Ken Reagan. Great stuff. Oh
yeah, great stuff. Reagan's a good writer.
Great stuff. Now, George, He admitted, he used to joke around. He said, it doesn't matter if as long as they're breathing, it doesn't even matter if they have a pulse. I mean, he was
Well,
playing that game.
oh yeah, well, the old idea was he said that people, and the guy told him, said, George, we can't. Some guy from after a guy from Texas, he used to have a magazine called Texas Monthly. Great. I think I'm sure they still have it. But the guy came in and wrote a story. He did a great job too. He spent about 2 weeks with us. I forget the guy's name. I got to find that book. But he said, George, man, people, he asked people why people laughing at you. George said, well, you laugh, you don't be mad at them laughing at you. You laugh with them. So that's why he started saying these things. People say, and I think one of the guys said, George, people say you old, you too old, you fat, you slow. And George said they're only saying that because it's true. So he got to laugh at himself. And when he started laughing at himself, people stopped laughing at George, but they laughed with George. And that's what changed the whole face during those 10 years of him coming back in boxing, because Tyson was the hot number ticket, and Tyson had the title, and everybody was chasing the title. And George, we wanted Mike Tyson. That's who he wanted. Because the only reason said that because Tyson had the title. Once Tyson lost the title, he didn't become the grape on the tree anymore. Evander Holyfield had the title, and that's who became that's the grape we wanted. And so it'd been great to have had that fight with Mike Tyson, but the title is what we wanted. And Michael, when he won the title back from what did he beat? Bruce Seldon, I think it was, or one of those guys he won the title from. He had an opportunity. Yeah, he had. Oh, that's a scrapbook. Somebody got that's a good scrapbook there, man. Oh, Trick got a good scrapbook there. Okay. Oh yeah, that's all in church. Look at that. But so when Tyson had the title, he had a chance to fight George. We could have made. Don King came down to Houston, and we made a deal to fight. But Mike got in trouble, of course, and that just changed it all over again. He lost first. He lost. Well, actually, a lot of people didn't know this, but we had signed the contract to fight Tyson after the fight at Buster Douglas. The fight was supposed to have been George and Mike Tyson after Buster Douglas, but Buster Douglas beat him. And that's Joan, and I think that's Big Will there. I think that's Big Will. One of them, he got like 100 of them, but I think that's the baby. That was Big Will was the baby there. That's a nice photo.
That whole book is just loaded with nice photos. Oh, they're not even photos.
So when he lost,
go ahead.
When he lost, no, that's okay. When he lost, let me see. That's is that in? That's Mobutu.
That's in Zaire.
Yeah, that's
Mobutu.
That's
Mobutu, isn't it?
Mobutu.
Yeah.
That's him. Yeah, Mobutu. Jose Seiko Mobutu. One of the most dangerous dictators ever.
That must have been a trip over there. George with his German shepherds. How did the crowd? What was this? Ali Boumba? Now did that drive George crazy or what?
No. Let me explain that to you. What happened with it, and about the dogs themselves, man. Those, trust me, they had used the shepherds some years, 100 years before, something the Belgians had. But those people loved those dogs George had. Some reporter wrote that, and it just became a storyline. That was all it was. There was nothing to that. And the funny thing about it is that you had a group of people on one side that was, and George would go through the town that was saying Ali Boumbaye, the one that was with Ali, but the one with George was saying the same thing. George Foreman Boumbaye. So, but it just made a better story for it to be Ali.
I get you.
So George never he never tried to change it out. No, he went like, okay, that's okay. Again, George, that night George got in the ring, guys, I can tell you this much. George was not fighting Ali, the boxer. He was fighting Ali, the myth. That's who he was fighting. He wasn't fighting Ali, the man. He wanted to destroy. That's why every shot that he threw, it wasn't to destroy Ali, the boxer. It's like, I want to get rid of this myth of people saying that this guy is this and that guy is that. That's why I say the fear was not there, because he didn't think about the fighter. He thought about just the myth. And when you make that mistake of fighting the myth rather than the man, that's the mistake. That's a big mistake. And that's what happened that night. He was not fighting. If George sticks to his basic boxing skills, I think he wins that fight either by late knockout or he gets the decision one way or the other. He had no fear in his heart that night, none, and that's why that's literally the way it went. But like I said again, for me to say it should have went that way would mean that that God's plan wouldn't have happened today. Because maybe if he wins that fight and he goes on for the next 5, 6, 7 years undefeated.
Oh yeah.
This story never gets told though.
Yeah.
It never gets told. So that's the good thing about it, that I look back and see. Because if not, then we don't get a chance to talk about George and the 10-year that he took off, and then he came back 20 years later and won the title.
Just one of the most greatest stories in boxing history,
and sports history,
sure.
Period. And that's why I say, and I'm just glad to be a part of it, guys. I was long for the ride, and I can say that.
let me take a little break here. Shout out some of the other brothers and sisters that came in here, man. It's just great to see you guys coming in here, man. On the mic with Terrence Bailey, my brother. Salute to you. Geo James, man, thank you so much for coming in here, man. I think I shouted out to Marion G. PH Big Dog, man, thank you for coming in, bro. Salute to you. Hyphy, salute, bro. Thanks for coming in here, man. I like the shot. My brother Mark Stearns, man. Flawless mentality with Mark Stearns.
Yeah, please. Man. What you got? Hello?
Yeah, I got a question. Yeah. I didn't interrupt you, Bruce. But,
no. I just want to shout everybody out, Trick, because I get pissed off when I don't get shouted out in the room. Teach, my brother, salute to you. Con Shawnery, they're coming in, man, and they're making my evening over here, man. We're getting like 25, 30 people that are listening to us at one time. It's a great thing, man. So I just want to shout out, and I want to show my gratitude for everybody coming in here, giving me the thumbs up and supporting us. We're here with Roy Foreman, man, George Foreman's brother. We're here with G5. We're here with my bro Trick Nolte. And we're chopping it up on a Friday night. I got the Toka 2 smoking over here, man. I'm having a great time. Go ahead, Trick. Go ahead, Trick. Ask me that question, brother.
I go ahead, ask your question first. I'll tell you this afterwards.
Yeah, I got a question. I was talking with Mike Williams a while back, and he told me that I think it was either 97 or 98 that they was trying to get a fight between George Foreman and Larry Holmes. Is that true?
Yes, it was. After we signed the fight, we made the fight. The fight had been made, and it was going to be held in the Astro. It was supposed to be held in the Astrodome. But what happened was the promoter of the event, the promoter of the event gave George $1 million, Larry Holmes $500,000. And the guy raised so much money, but couldn't find out the guy basically was a crook. He took the money and left and went back to England, ran out to England somewhere, and the fight was never made.
Man.
Yep, it was. They had sold about 30,000 tickets for that fight before he did that. The guy just disappeared.
Was that before the return, or was that after the first retirement? Or
this is after the first retirement. After this was going to be George's last fight after he had fought Shannon Briggs, I think. It was after the Briggs fight, and he was going. That was the only fight. That was the only fight.
Everybody said, why didn't Larry Holmes and George Foreman ever fight? Because
Yeah,
they were the same age. But it was that 10-year absence that George took, bro. It was
and people and you have to look at the fact that when Larry was younger coming up, he was actually years behind George in boxing.
Yeah.
Larry didn't turn pro, I think, until 1972 after the Olympics. After he lost to Dwayne Bobbick, I think it was. He lost him. Yeah. And George had been fighting already since 1969. So 68, 69. He fought Frazier in 73. So Larry really didn't turn pro around 73 or 74. So that fight, when they were that young together, never would have been made. Dunn was not going to put Larry in the ring with George at that young of age, at 23 or 24 years old, because George probably would have destroyed him at that time. Larry, he had those 10 years to get to become a better fighter, develop a tremendous following, and became a great fighter. But prior to that, he was still years behind George from a developmental stage point at that time.
Now, when George came back, to me, after he beat Alex Stewart, that's when I kind of said, man, Alex made George's face look pretty nasty.
Oh man, Alex Stewart was a heck of a puncher, a tough guy. Side note to that is that after the fight, they found out that his corner had dipped his glove when they left out, when the inspectors for somehow or another left out the dressing room, his inspectors had put Alex Stewart's glove, his hand wraps inside water, a pail of water, and that made that stuff become like a plaster of Paris on his hands. And I knew,
Wow.
I could tell because George never swelled up in a fight. Never. He went 12 rounds with Holyfield. Never looked like that. No fight had he ever swelled up like that. So what happened was we go back to the dressing rooms afterwards, and I'm like, because I was going to say, thank you for the fight. George won the decision. George clearly outboxed him, but that kid was just doing something. George said it felt like a brick. I wouldn't have thought about it when George said it felt like a brick was hitting him. Every time he said, kid feels like a brick is in his hand or something, right? So after the fight, so I go to the dressing room, and sure enough, in the trash thing now, I find the hand wrap. That hand wrap was heavy. It felt just like a piece of plaster of Paris on that glove, in his gloves. And by the time I got to the inspector, he was like, we don't know if that's his gloves or whatever. And we just let it go. But that was a tough fight. Alex was. Then after that, I think he took on a couple of fights. Then we took on Tommy Morrison.
Oh yeah.
And for the WBO title, and Tommy won a split decision on that. And George liked Tommy. That's the thing about it, because Tommy had just lost, I think, a fight to Ray Mercer prior to that. And
got destroyed.
He got. And so, and the funny thing about it, George had talked to Tommy. I was at that fight, and I went back home and I called up John Brown, the guy who had been managing Tommy at the time and training him. And John and I were good friends. We had been friends since the amateurs. So and he literally told Tommy what he should have been doing when he boxed Ray Mercer. And Tommy did just what he should have did against George. He boxed and moved. And but that's okay. He was a nice kid. I like Tommy. To this day, I talk to his ex-wife, and his son. He has two sons that box now, by the way. I forget their name. One's name. There's two of his sons, I think, box. One's a heavyweight, and one's a middleweight. Trey, and I forget the other one's name.
But one's a heavyweight, and one of them's got a fight coming up against.
Oh, does he? Okay.
No, they might look like him physically, but they don't fight like Tommy Morrison.
No, they don't fight like Tommy. No. Tommy was a bad guy, man. A lot of people, he was a good fighter. He was a good fighter.
Now, how about the fight with Jerry Cooney?
His son's got a fight coming up.
Tell us a little bit about that one. The Jerry Cooney.
Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney
at the time.
Jerry Cooney was really that was the biggest name prior to Holyfield at the time, because Jerry had fought Michael Spinks. Of course, he fought the big fight with Larry Holmes. And Jerry was a big guy and a big puncher. So that may have been the biggest fight that I've seen as a threat in coming back. We fought him January 1990. And right the day after, I think it was the day after George's birthday, somewhere in the neighborhood, 10th or 12th or something like that, George's birthday. And because then they were having fights like on a Monday night back then. Guys don't remember that, but they were having fights on Monday nights and Tuesday nights.
Remember that?
Tuesday nights.
Pay-per-view fights.
Yeah, pay-per-view fights. And so that was one of the first $1 million buys in boxing with George and Cooney. Did tremendous numbers. And then the biggest and then Jerry came out. And we had worked on a lot of things for that fight with Cooney, because Cooney was tall. It was the first guy really George that fought that was probably taller than him. Because Jerry's like 6'7". And we watched the fight with Larry, but of course Larry wasn't the puncher Jerry was, but George was. He's sharper, maybe perhaps a sharper puncher, and used his jab a lot more. So George knew that Jerry expected George to come out jabbing, boxing, and do all of the typical maneuvers. But it happened, and we did that in the first round. But if you see that fight, at the end of the first round, Jerry hits Larry with a left hook, right? And man, you could hear that shot through that whole building. It sounded like a gun. Pow! I mean, that's how hard it was. And when George came back to the corner, it was like, that's not happening again. So he changed the whole strategy in the next round and went straight after Jerry. And when he did, and he caught Jerry with those shots, I mean, that was all she wrote. Because he just wasn't the same guy after that. That's probably the hardest I've seen George hit anybody in that doing that. He caught him.
Oh,
Geez, that
that
was. I
second,
mean,
that second
that
right
second
hand.
right hand was like, oh
Oh,
my God, yes, it was. But I mean, that's the old saying. I always tell George felt bad about that. I said, but George, you know what? I said he was in the way. He was in the way of what you were trying to get done. You just didn't have time to feel sorry for anybody at that time. You walked over, said hello after we talked. They became good friends too. I said, but he was in the way. And once you got him out the way, you could be friends and all that stuff. And they were. But that night, there was no friends. It
no,
was too good.
I've heard
It,
George speak so highly about some of his former
yeah,
opponents.
yeah. Oh,
I mean,
they call
Muhammad
him.
Ali was his favorite man
No,
in the world. I
it
think that was
was.
his
It was
favorite
because
human
Ali was
being.
bigger. Ali was bigger than became bigger than boxing himself. He was a guy that goes back to the like him or hate him, the not going into the army. That was his decision, and he had to put up with it. And changed his name from what was it, Cassius Clay, to become Muhammad Ali, to Muhammad
Mhm.
Ali, to being a Muslim. That was his decision. He lived with it, and you had to respect him for that. He spoke out against a lot of things, and hey, and so you had to you couldn't help but become a fan of his. Literally, yeah, yeah. You became a fan of his, and you said, "This guy, man, he didn't care about money and stuff like that. He gave it up." He said, "Now I got to speak out," and that's what he did for black men in this country and people of color appeared in this country, and for anybody that was opposed to the war in this country, regardless of whether you know, you were, Asian, uh, uh, black, European, Caucasian. That's what it was, and they traveled around the world doing just those things. So you became an admirer of him, but and so becoming friends afterwards, it wasn't about anything, but it was business, all about business. And so after it was over, with you go and you shake the guy's hand, you hug him and say, "Let's go have dinner late on the night after the fight or after the next day, whatever." But all of those guys came down and visited the church afterwards in between before. Michael Moore, Grant, all those guys, they've been to the church there in Houston to visit. And that's,
Let's
I'm saying, that's a good thing.
let me show something here if we can before we talk about this next one. See if I can get it on the screen here, man. There we
Oh,
go.
Michael Moore. Yes. Michael Moore. Now,
Fight, man. I mean, I can only imagine what it must have been like to be at ringside during that fight, man.
oh man, it was, and I was in the corner that night. I'm telling you, it was just crazy. Because but he had told us, he said, "I
Boy,
don't
did
need
you
to hear you
faint?
screaming again." No, I never did. No, I just
They
was
said you
going.
fainted,
No.
man. That's what I heard. They
Uh-huh.
said you fainted. Okay.
Mm.
They said you
Oh, you
fainted in
said
the corner
fainted.
somewhere.
No, that's not what
Yeah,
happened.
I fainted.
If you play that back, you're going to see that there's a boom that's over the head. They were trying to get what they call it. They were trying to get something on the mic with the guys in the corner. I mean, with people talking. What did they get the boom as close as you can? And they were trying to get the boom as close as they could to George. I just happened to be right. If you look at behind him, you're gonna see the boom that's just coming down, and I just have to be right behind him. And the boom hits me in the back of the head. That's what knocked. I got knocked out,
Okay.
and it
Oh, you
was
got
like
now. Okay,
bam.
I thought you said you fainted.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a little different from feigning. I think I'd
No,
rather get knocked out
Okay.
than
They
faint
said somebody
anyway.
heard it.
And that because nobody's seen it. Very few people seen. Bob Arum, I think, saw it happen because Arum said, "No, the damn microphone hit him in his head," and that's what happened. The microphone hit me right in the top back of my head, and I mean, it just went like I went like blank. I was just speared. Because I was being held up by all the people in the ring. But by the time anybody paid attention to it, everybody moved aside. I just fell back. But because that's why I didn't fall down directly when it happened. I was going down, but I couldn't hit because there was too many people on the floor. The next time I was out on the floor.
Now, why do you think Michael Moore could never accept that knockout? He always said, to this day, he says it was a lucky punch.
Well, I mean, hey, call it what you want. I mean,
Oh, it was set up. You watch it, and you could see George.
Because he didn't want to believe that he was set up by it though. George just set him up. I mean, he really was set up. He's like I said, Michael got courageous because he knew he was winning the fight. He knew he was winning the fight 7 rounds to 2. Yeah, he was winning the fight 7 rounds to 2. But Teddy Atlas knew something was up because Teddy Atlas told him. I could hear Teddy in the corner, right? Because Teddy was telling him, "Man, whatever you do, you got to stay moving on this guy. Don't slow down on this guy, because if you do, his thing was he's like an old truck. It's that truck be going up the hill. You keep it going up the hill, keep it going up the hill. But when it gets to the top of that hill, it's gonna go down on the other side, and it's gonna be no stopping. That's what Terry said. Terry told him that. Teddy told him that. If you listen to that play, he said, "Don't." I'm telling you, don't. And Michael made the classic mistake. Michael stopped, and Michael stopped boxing and stopped moving. But George had hit Michael, and the reason Teddy said that was at the end of the eighth round rather. George had hits Michael Moore with a shot to the side, and I mean Michael's legs just froze, and then the bell rang, bing. So the bell rang. He gets back to his corner, and they were trying to get his legs back up. He had no more legs, and ninth round he was just kind of like going through it, but he kind of like got his feelings back again now. And it's the 10th round. When he comes back for the 10th round, he's like so sure he's got this thing. And Teddy had told him, man, I'm telling you, don't stay in front. Michael Teddy was, don't stay in front of him. And that's the same thing that Georgie Benton has said to Holyfield in the 10th round, I think, was against the fight with Holyfield, 6th round, Holyfield. He told Holyfield, don't stand in front of this man. If he hits you, George Benton told Holyfield, said, if he hits you, you'll be deader than any son of a bitch in the graveyard. That's what he said. He said, don't stand. You can't stand. And Holyfield made the mistake. Holyfield stood still. And when he came back at the end of that round, Holyfield asked him, he said, do I still have my teeth in my mouth? He said, yeah. Yep, he said, that's how hard George hit him. He said, man, I think I got my teeth got knocked out my mouth. He said, no, yeah. You still got your teeth in your mouth. That's how hard. And so, those veterans, those trainers like that, they knew. And Teddy knew that you could not make a mistake against George, because you may think you've been hitting him, but you wasn't hurting him. George had conditioned himself, man, to do just what he had to do, and that's what he did.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, how about when George went to? How about when he fought the German?
Axel Schultz.
Axel Schultz. Yeah.
We had been now in between that. We had done, if you remember, we had been doing the show on ABC called George, and for the year prior to that, George, we went to Hollywood. He did a lot of Hollywood things, right? Moved out to LA, and we was training out there. And nobody trains in LA. You do this, you go out, you're a celebrity. So, and then the Schultz fight came up, but because George was doing it, we was doing a TV show and everything else out in LA. Honestly, he didn't train right for that fight. He may have gotten 6 weeks of training in for that fight, maybe 6. And it just wasn't the same. And Schultz was a young, aggressive kid who came in fighting for, I always tell people, he's fighting for God and country, but not necessarily in that order. And that's what Joe Louis said that about Max Mellon at the time. He said fighting for God and country, but not in that order. It may be, no, he said country. Yeah, that's right. He said God and country. He said, but not necessarily in that order. It might be country first and God second. And those guys, and both of them put up one of the best showings that they ever did. Schultz never looked that good again against anybody.
Never. Now, I'm going to get off subject just a bit here. On Sunday, we're going to have the 1-year anniversary of the death of one of my favorite fighters, man, from up here on the East Coast, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. You have any memories of Marvelous Marvin, Roy?
Marvin Hagler was perhaps one of the people always thought Marvin Hagler was a mean guy, because Marvin was always about business. This is a good businessman, but he was just stoic. He didn't look like the kind of guy that you think could make him laugh, but he loved to laugh. A lot of people don't know that. I remember this. We were there he was getting ready for the fight with Tommy Hearns, and we were sitting in Caesars, and he came in that early. I got up early that morning for some reason. I don't know. I was doing the broadcast, but I got up early that morning, brothers. And Marvin must have been on this run. He got up every morning and ran. He was this guy. If you notice, even that years out of the ring, the guy never gained a pound. He still looked great. I think that's why people are so hard for it to believe. But he came in into the Caesars, had a little place, used to be a little arena, that had a little section of it that you could go in and everybody would sit and they would bring a telephone to you. You could talk on at your booth and stuff. It was really kind of classy the way they used to do it. And so he comes in and I'm sitting there, and I had met him probably in 86. He had just, it was after Willie Warren. Was it Willie Warren fight? Yeah, after Willie Warren Monroe fight. the first time. He had lost to Willie Warren Monroe the first time.
Oh, that was
And
in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was in the 70s. So
Yeah.
I had met him a little after that, and he didn't remember. We started talking, and then he remembered. And he said, "Oh yeah." We started talking. I told him I'm George's brother. You know, George hadn't even started back boxing yet, and so we got to talking. And man, this guy laughed and laughed, and he laughed so hard. He said, "Man, you know," he said, "I don't get a chance." He said, "Because everybody, most of the time, they want to talk about, you know, boxing and other things." But I was more interested in him because he had become somewhat of a commercial success. You know, he was doing commercials, man. He had Pizza Hut, he had Right Guard, he had he had about 3 or 4. I think a
One
car
of
commercial.
the last boxers to do commercials. You don't see it.
Yeah, one of the last guy. Right, he was. He had quite a few commercials. So and we talked about that, and he was more proud of that. He was as proud of that as he had been in the boxing ring. And then, of course, the fight with Sugar Ray came, you know, afterwards. And he was disappointed with that. And he just never boxed again after that. I seen him a couple of times at not the Hall of Fame. He came to something we had, and he was there. I think it was Fight of the Decade or something that they had it in '95. But he never really, that probably, up until maybe a couple of years before, I think that angered him more than anything. We realized you just got to close the door on some things. And he did, but he left boxing, and he never regretted it, you know. And he was a smart guy. He lived well. He went to England, and you know, I mean, over to I think it was Italy or somewhere. Started doing movies. You know, he was a commercial success and a very nice guy. But a lot of people thought he just had this look because he didn't look like the kind of guy you would just stop and talk to. You know what I mean? And that was him. But he was, man, very, very, very funny guy. And I was as shocked as anybody, you know, that when they said he had passed. But he went peacefully, laying on the sofa, from what I understand. You can't get no better than that being at home. So, but he was one of the, perhaps, if not the greatest middleweight fighter, he was perhaps one of the top 10 greatest fighters ever in the sport of boxing. I'm talking about all across the line. One of the greatest fighters ever. The guy took on everybody. He fought guys at home at the time when they robbed decisions and everything else. He fight guys in their backyard. He fought Willie Monroe in Philly. He fought George. What's his name? Benny Briscoe, Cyclone Hart. He fought all those guys. Bobby Watts. He fought all those guys. Man, he didn't care. He was a fighter. That's what he was. And that's what I loved about that.
Yeah, that's why I respect him so much. And Sunday, I want to pay a little tribute to him on his anniversary of his passing. Well, that was such a sad day, and I can't believe it's been a year already.
I know time. It doesn't seem like it, does it? Yeah, it does. But yeah, it's been a year. He was a great guy in boxing. You know, we had a loss for having lost a guy like Marvin Hagler, because there was so much history that he could have still been giving to people even today. But you know, that's life.
That's life, man. That's full circle. And
full circle.
I mourn these guys, but when I get back, I like to celebrate their past. You know, I like because death is part of life. It's inevitable. And you know, the fact is, all the great boxers that we're talking about now. I mean, the greatest, man. You know, Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Kenny Norton, Larry Holmes. So many of those boxers aren't with us anymore. And you know, it's a tragedy every time it happens, man. You know, I love talking up here with George Foreman's brother, bro. I mean, you sound just like George too. You know, I'm sure you've been told that a million times.
Yeah, I've been told that a lot. I can't convince his bankers that though. I try to call them on the phone. Give Roy $2 million. Wow. This George? This ain't George. I guess it ain't. I like that.
If anybody in the chat has any questions for Roy, or Trick or G5, G, you still there, bro? You want to ask Roy anything?
G5 still there?
A couple of Texas tornadoes over there, man.
One of George's grills. That's the name of it, called the G5.
All right.
Yep.
That's the one that you.
It sure is.
That's one. Yeah, it's called a G5, man. You can take it. You should trademark that name, G5. We could have got you paid, man.
Man, hey, if I would have known, man, hey, we would have had it going, man. I would have gave you a cut for cosign and everything. Hey, like Roy came up with this idea. Hey, cut that man a check. How many we sold? 100 million? Man, get that man his cut. No, but no, what? I got a question. Did George ever state why he named all his sons George?
Well, there's two sides to that story.
Okay.
When the one part, he always say he was training for memory loss. When he got older in his age, he say he called everybody George. He just say, "Hey, George." They didn't know he was talking to, so everybody would come. That was always the thing. That was the story about it. But what had actually happened later on in life, when George got grown, he found out that he had a different father than what we all did. And when he discovered that, that kind of bothered him for a while, because then he realized that he was a foreman, but he was my father is the one who really raised him. But he wanted to know who his dad. It's been years and years and years, and so since he was born, my mother hadn't seen his father. But my father, J.D. Foreman, is the one that raised him, and that was always his dad. So, but he always said he wanted to make sure that from that point on, his children would know who their father was. And so he named all the boys George Foreman. And that was really why he did it that way.
Okay. Because I always wondered, I was like, it's not a bad thing. It's one of those questions or one of those things where you kind of wonder, like, what was Big George?
Yeah.
Thought process,
the reason behind that? Yeah. Well, that's what his thought process was. But you had to be able to do something like he did to let a woman name him that many children after him. Because I tried it, mine were like, you don't make nearly. You make that kind of money, you can name all of them, Roy, but you don't make that kind of money. So let's just let it go. And so, I had to give mine different names. Yeah, right, and who he was. But that was it, But that was really the reason behind it. Just I'm saying, I want my children from now on, I want them to make sure they know who and their grandchildren to know who their father was, George Foreman.
Okay. Now I don't know if you remember one of my buddies on IG. You was in his chat. We was on live together. Clarence McLean. He's like, man,
I talk to Clarence all the time. Yeah, I talk to Clarence all the time.
You came in and we was on the panel together. He's like, hey, he said, that's Roy Foreman. That's Big George's brother. And he's like, man, we're supposed to set up an interview. And we had spoke for a little bit out there when Bruce was like, hey, we got Roy. And I was like, man, I said, he a cool dude. I said, we spoke to him briefly, but I think you had some business to attend to. So
yeah, I did. I was in the airport. I was in the airport in New York, and I just happened to jump on, and I seen you in Clarence home. And I jumped on because I do my Facebook and my YouTube thing, and Clarence always comes on. I always told him that I want to get up to meet with him in New York, and when he does something, I help him. He wants me to help him with something. I've been more than glad to.
Okay.
He loves the sport. He loves the sport of boxing. He loves it.
Oh yeah. We definitely do.
Clarence, good brother, man. Good brother.
Yeah,
I've been on many panels with Clarence.
Okay, he's nice young man. He just got married. I got him when his anniversary, when he got married, and seen his wife and stuff, man. He's like,
we got a question out there from J Blues Radio. He said he was always fascinated by the story of George having to defend his brothers from his pet lion. Now he had a couple of exotic pets, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a lion. Well, we had a bunch of one time we had a baby elephant, a lion, a tiger. What's that thing? The peacock. Yeah, we had them all. Well, that's why I told you when they get to a point, you just got to have something different. Cars don't do it no more. So I want a car. We had Clydesdale. We had everything down there, but it was mostly for the kids. But not the lion and tiger. We found out that wasn't nothing to play with. They don't play. They be for real. They know you have to. Only way those, you watch those guys if you remember what happened with the guy Sickfield and Roy. I think it was. Which one was it? Sickfield, the tiger attacked him. And, you can play with those things for a while and a long time, but they'll never tame. And all it takes is for that instinct of theirs to come out one time. And my brother, George, saved him from, I think it was the lion that was about to get my brother's Robert. And just so happened, George was coming out there at the same time. He got that cage just in time because that joker said, lunch. I'm gonna have me some lunch today.
Damn.
Yeah, and the thing about
it, Foreman Family Zoo, I guess, huh?
Oh yeah, we had it, man. You name it, we had it. We had dogs, cats. Like I say, he had a baby elephant.
Oh damn, a lion, a tiger, and an elephant.
Yeah, all of them. We had them all, man. And that thing with what's that colorful bird? I just said it, not the
peacock.
Peacock. Well, we had all those things, man. but not realizing that you put them down there in March and that cold weather, they ain't gonna live too long.
Wow.
They're warm weather. All those are warm weather animals. But he wound up donating the lion and tiger to the zoo there in I think it was Louisiana. He had to donate to them because they just got to the point you couldn't keep them things.
Crazy stuff.
How much? Hey, I got a question. I got a question. How much did it cost to feed that tiger and the lion?
A lot. A lot. I mean,
I can imagine. A lot. Yeah.
You had to serve them certain food in order for them to try to keep that taste that they want for blood out of their mouth. So there were certain meats you had to buy. You kept it frozen and you gave it to them pretty much while it was hard, because if it dried, they got the blood. So you had to make sure they never got the taste of the blood.
Wow. Now somebody asked a question out here. My brother Terrence Bailey wants to know, did George name his girls? Didn't he name his daughters Georgette? Didn't he have the George and his daughter's name too?
One is named Frida. Well, she died last year.
Yeah, Frida Box too, correct?
Frida Box, yeah. Her name was Frida George. And then there's a Georgetta. And she lives out in Los Angeles. She works for Byron Allen, as a matter of fact. She's the producer. She worked for HBO. She worked with us at HBO for a while, but she went out to she works for Byron Allen Studios. She's a producer for Byron Allen. And she does speaking engagements and stuff on her own. She's very talented. Graduated from Pepperdine University,
California.
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff, man. Now, when did George realize that oldest heavyweight champ on record? When did he kind of say it's time to hang these up? Was it after the fight with
Briggs?
Axel Schultz? Or was
the Briggs fight? The Briggs fight was last. Fight. As far as the fight, he was only going to do. He and Ladd were going to do it just as for old time's sake. But he had made up his mind after that fight with Shannon Briggs, because that was such a robbery to the point. And he said, man, sometimes they just want you out. Because George was destroying the whole thing of that, beating all those young guys. We had beat Lou Savarese right before that, and he was just kind of destroying that whole thing about old fighters supposed to be old. And he wasn't. He was just, they didn't realize that the lifestyle that George kept him. It was his lifestyle. But he said if it wasn't for the training, he said, man, if it wasn't for the training, I would have boxed. I was 50. He said, but the training was too hard. It just got too hard on you after a while. He didn't have time to train. So because by that, the grill had kicked off, and, his business life with Meineke and Nike and Frito-Lay, it was just such a commercial success that he just didn't have time to box anymore. He couldn't train.
Who wants to get beat up when you're a millionaire?
Yeah, but he said a fight didn't bother him. He said it was just a training. I could have done that. I could have fought for out till I was 50. I wouldn't care. But just
now, what was the difference? What was the difference between George, the younger George, and the older George in the mind? What was the difference?
Discipline. Just a disciplined mind. 23, 24, 25, 26. You sitting up at home, you wondering what's going on. So you want to go out somewhere to the lights, to the clubs, and do things and run things. But all of a sudden, when you're 36 or 37, you don't think about that anymore because you done that. So it became more. He was a disciplined George Foreman, very disciplined, and he had something else to do, guys. It's that he had the church, and the church was his involvement. So we had church services on Wednesday nights, Saturday nights, and Sunday nights. Those were our Sunday morning and Sunday nights. So that's what we did. There was no need to go to we had the youth center. We had the church, and that was enough that satisfied our lives. So there was nothing else to do. We stayed at my mother's house, or go and visit. That was everybody stopping around was my mom's house. So we go there every evening, and she'd cook dinner for us. Sometimes the wives got mad because we ate at my mother before we went home. But that's the way it was. So that was the difference, just plain discipline. And I tell any young fighter today, if you're going to be Floyd Mayweather kind of had that, and you could always tell when he stepped away from me because he got into some kind of trouble himself. Go to a club, you can't just go out. Somebody's going to always be out to bother you. So he, when you decide to go out, somebody's going to do something. Mike Tyson the same way, a lot of them. So you stay home, you relax, you play with your kids, and there's nothing exciting you out there anymore. And that it was just a discipline. Believe me, that's all it was, guys. Just a discipline thing.
You know, I heard George say in his first career he wanted to kill his opponents. In his second career, he just wanted to win.
Never a shot in anger. Never a shot thrown in anger.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't think you could tell Jerry Cooney that, but it's not. Like I said,
Evander Holyfield, man. What was it? It was around 9 in that
6.
Fight when they went.
That was the 6. I remember that 6th round like it was yesterday.
6th round.
But I mean, but just that, never, like you say, never tried to hurt anybody. So at that time, if you remember the early fight, Jordan would be the one to tell the referee to stop the fight. He hit the guy so hard, the guy was like, he said, "Man, stop it." The referee goes, "No, go and fight." So he tried to then find the guy's corner would say, "Okay, stop it," because the guy he ain't gonna take it. The guy now George make the referee pick the mouthpiece up. So pick the mouthpiece. The referee goes, "No, man, pick the mouthpiece up." And the guy, and that's when they started that 10-second thing. He knocked the mouthpiece out, the action stops, the referee gives him the mouthpiece. It's not about trying to hurt anybody. You try to win.
I believe when he hit Cooney, he knocked his mouthpiece so far.
Oh yeah, it went to the. It was actually they found it on the floor, and it was right behind the broadcasters. Behind the broadcasters.
Wow.
Yeah, behind the broadcasters.
It's those things you remember about the career of a great fighter. It's like bing, that mouthpiece just went flying
right up in the air, in the back. But like I said,
Ashley's Corner. Thanks for coming in, honey. Thank you so much.
Great time, and I tell you what, we got an appreciation for people, because if people made George. I mean, you could say his fights, the fight fan, but people got behind him, grandmothers, grandfathers. Uncles and aunties, and because they were at that same age now, 40 years old, 42, 43, and they go like, "Hey man, life ain't no 40 years old is not a death sentence. We're gonna, we can do just anything anybody else wants to do." So that's really what made the appreciation for people, man, became the thing with him. And that's what I think more than anything I appreciated. There was that it became an appreciation for people, and people like they see us on the street, man. We go to restaurants, they want to buy hamburgers and whatever, and buy dinners and stuff like let me pay for this. People, and once you get, and that's I think what most entertainers. I don't care whether they're actors, boxers, basketball players, whatever they do. Anybody's in that you need people to come as part of what you're making, earning your living. You have to appreciate people. And once you appreciate people, then life change. Mike Tyson had to learn to appreciate people. He's a much better person now. When you see him now, you have to learn to appreciate people, because man, if folks don't go for you, guess what? You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it.
Man, great stuff. We've been here for an hour and a half.
I know. My wife's been looking at me funny.
Oh man, I was just gonna say I don't want you to wear out your welcome, man. But I don't want me wearing out myself with you. But I want to come on here again.
Hey,
man.
Look,
great talking to you, brother.
Just give me any time and let me know early enough. I'll put time aside to be and talk with you guys. Maybe we can talk about some of the up and coming fights next time. I have 2 sites. I have a Facebook show. That's what Clarence sees me on my Facebook Live. But I have a network. A Facebook. a YouTube. It's called The Punch You Didn't See, and we do that. And that comes up. It should be. It's up. We haven't done one in a while because I've been I do promotion. We just had a promotion in Dallas. We're going to be going. I got 2 young fighters that I'm working. 3 young fighters I'm working with. One by the name of Dundrell Haynes. He's undefeated welterweight at 140. So this kid's going to be fantastic. I'm telling you, he's going to be one of them. His nickname is Sniper. And Charlie Shipes, the Georgia trainer, gave him that nickname, Sniper. This kid is good. I'm telling you, he's going to be good. And I have a son who boxes. His name is Jonathan Foreman. He's 6'7" and 2, or 6'2", something like that.
Whoa!
And I have another kid named Nicholas. I cannot pronounce Nicholas' last. We just call him Nick. And we're going to Mississippi on April. We just had our last show in Dallas last week, about 2 weeks ago. We're going to be in Mississippi April 30th, and then we're going to come back to Houston in May the 23rd, I think, for our next show. And we have a streaming company that we set up. We set up a streaming company called gtvnow.com. That's the name of our streaming company, and we will be broadcasting on our platform. And it's a pay-per-view platform sometime, but you can see other shows. And I have a show on there as well, but it's called gtvnow.com. But I'll send you the information about the show in Dallas. I'm sorry, in Houston, Anthony. So you'll have that. I'll make sure you got the information.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll let you know what it's all about.
Sure.
So
Hey, Trick, send it to me too.
And then, now I want to tell you guys something. You was talking about I'm in the process of closing out a deal with a company called Rose Essentials, and they are a company that deals with cannabis products made of cannabis. It's healing cream, lotion, energy drinks, and the gummies, of course, the gummies for energy, and it's called Yes. Oh no, we don't have the weed though. We don't have the actual. It's just
Bruce, you hell. Hey, Roy, I could have warned you, big dog. I could have warned you. I knew it was coming.
Yeah, it's a CBD products, but it's CBD products. So, and we'll close. We'll be hitting the market. It's called Roy Foreman's Rose Essential. And I'll send you, like I said, I'll send you guys the links and stuff too, and you can check it out. We should be having it up and running about what's this? The 1st of April.
Okay.
So I couldn't be that bold as you are though, right there now, Bruce.
Z.
That's for medicinal purposes.
I admire you. I admire you. Just became my hero, Bruce.
Bro, yeah. Great. Oh man. I love it. I love it. You know, it's one of the things that even guys like Trick who don't smoke it, bro. We got a bond. We got a bond. And I think
you got a bond.
The gooey hemp sticks keeps us all together over here.
I was a 70 child. The sticky icky. I was a 70 child. Okay, so I know all about it. But guys, I want to thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure. And like I said, just if you want me, give me a few days, in advance, and I'll set up and I'll be here for you if you need me, if you want.
Yes, sir, bro. A pleasure meeting you, Roy. God bless you. God bless your family, man.
G5.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, man.
G5, we could have been rich. We could have been rich, G5. Okay,
man. I know. I know, man. Tell Big George. Tell him like, hey. It was already a G5 before you made that grill. I don't think he was born. Well, no, I was born.
You gotta hit him with a copyright G.
It's like, let him know. Let's see. Let's see if we can go ahead and get a little check. I'm like, you know what? Since Roy came up with it, we'll do it like a 70-30 split. Like, hey, Roy, you take that 70, just give me the 30. I don't need that much. My dad is not that much.
I don't need that much.
Really?
Okay, guys, well you're a good man. We'll go 50-50.
All right. Take care, guys. There you go. Anthony, thank you so much. When you need me, just let me know. Bruce, it's been a pleasure, man. I enjoyed it. And hello to everybody that we didn't get a chance to talk to, and thank them for chiming in as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So salute, man.
All right.
Salute.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
This is great.
Peace.
All right.
To you. Peace out.
Right, bye-bye. Yep. Thank you.
G5, you want to say some parting words over here, my brother?
Man, it's cold out here, man. I'm about to get ready to go roll up myself here in a minute. You keep putting up buds, and I keep hearing that damn toka tube in the back. I'm like, man, I couldn't even get here. I was driving for the most of the part. I was here the whole time. I'm a student, so when somebody's talking and they just giving us life stories about, I just soak it up like a sponge. I'm driving. I told my kids, turn that damn tablet down. Shoot, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, man, turn that tablet down. I'm enjoying all this, just soak it all up. I was wondering if he was gonna remember that because we had spoke before, on Clarence's live. So I was just like, I had a good vibe already off of Roy Foreman. But shout out to him for just coming up. Trick, you already know the plug in the socket, working behind the scene. Appreciate your hard work, man. Y'all get that man Trick note to his flowers, man. He do a lot of stuff for a lot of people. And if y'all wonder how they got him, Trick did it. You know what I'm saying? But y'all can find me G5 underscore
All
Gabe,
right,
Instagram,
appreciate it.
YouTube. You know, and hey, we building, man. So shout out to everybody that came through, of course, and supported my man Bruce Goals, and myself and Trick, and just putting a spotlight on Roy Foreman. It's more that he has in store, man. It was questions I didn't get to ask, but we gonna get to him. I wanted to know, hey, did he ever get hit by George? And did you want to fight him, or did you want to grab a gun because he hit so damn hard? You know how brothers getting like, Roy, George, you should have been doing this. Well, you didn't tell him to do this. Shut up and just haul off and hit him with one of those haymakers. And I wondered, it was many questions, but hey, this is a dope interview, man. Bruce, salute to you, my brother. Great work, man. Great work. Keep on building. We both building. We on the way to 500 subs apiece, Bruce. We both on the way.
That G5, man. It's guys like Trick Nolte that get us closer to the finish line over here, bro. I mean, really, it's a great thing, man. It's a great thing having everybody up here together. And yeah, a couple of more people came in late, man. Let me shout out Unscripted. We got you over here already, man. Jelly Bean 4280, bro. Thanks for coming in. Teach, my brother. Mr. Brooks, man. Thank you for coming in here. Trick Nolte, you want to say any goodbye words to the people out there, my brother?
Yeah, hey, this is a great interview, man. I was talking to him earlier, and I was telling him, the town that I'm from, some years ago, they were honoring Roy Harris. Remember him? Couldn't you, Roy Harris?
Oh yeah,
he fought, they were honoring him out in the town that I'm from, and Roy was out there with George.
George, didn't he?
And no, he didn't fight George. I think George lived before. He was a little before George's time. So he didn't fight. No, it was about the same time. No, they didn't fight though. But we was talking about that earlier, man, and just to get him on and let him tell some stories. That with the Alex Stewart and the hand wraps, man, that's crazy. And oh my gosh, man, and it was just great to listen to him and talk, man, and let him cook, and you see how comfortable he was, man, and people in the chat was talking about stuff, man, and I'm not gonna keep some of here babbling on, but hey, thank you for having me on, Bruce, G5, and y'all some solid guys. Y'all keep going, y'all building, y'all getting it up. You say y'all almost 500 apiece, so y'all keep doing what y'all doing, man, and y'all gonna get there, man. So everybody in the chat, y'all have a good night. Thanks for coming through, and appreciate you, Bruce, for having me on, man, once again.
Salute Trick Nolte, man. I want to thank everybody that came out here. I want to thank Trick Nolte, especially if I haven't a million times, because if it wasn't for Trick, we wouldn't even had a show tonight, man. Trick gave me a call earlier in the week. He asked me if I'd like to have Roy Foreman on, and I knew who Roy was, but I wasn't really hip on. I knew he was George Foreman's brother, and I knew we were going to talk a lot about George on here. And sure enough, man, and we got it from the horse's mouth. We got some gems, the Alex Stewart revelations, man, the Jerry Cooney, all that great stuff. And Trick Nolte's turned me on to that. Like we were talking to Mark Breland, we were talking to Marlon Starling earlier today, man, and all the fighters you see out there, man. You see them on Drew's show, Stormy's show over here, man. Mad Chad's. Trick Nolte's the guy who brings it to us, man. So let's shout out to Trick Nolte, man, and everybody else out there who stopped in, man. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, man. My mother-in-law passed away yesterday, so keep her in your prayers. But it was a blessing. She suffered from Alzheimer's for many years. And anyway, man, I didn't think I was going to go on for a day or so. I was supposed to do my show at Big Duke tonight with the fourth quarter, and I just wasn't into it. But Trick lined up Roy Foreman over here, and my wife said, yeah, pull it together, go out there, man, smoke a few, take a few hits on the Toka too, and I did, and I appreciate everybody coming here, man. Thank you so much, Roy Foreman. We're going to talk to you again. Everybody out there, man, take nothing for granted. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Grab the present, man. Ride with it, embrace it. Fights are going to be with us for a long time, man. And thanks to the good people out here, we're going to talk to them next time. We're going to talk about the current state of boxing. We'll see if we can get Roy to tell us about that, because he's involved in promoting fights, man. There's a lot more than just the past. But unfortunately, sometimes I'm stuck in the past, man. And if we don't know more about the past, we're not going to understand the future. And we heard some gems today that really bring it into perspective. So, man, thank you so much out there, man. I felt nothing but love and respect for boxing in this room today, man. Peace.